Hey, how you doing? This is Adam Post. Woke schools panic as millions in diversity grants get canceled nationwide. I wasn't aware of how much money is actually being pulled back right now from public schools pushing diversity, pushing inappropriate agendas, and wasting federal money. The Department of Education has been busy. In Arizona, 3 Arizona school districts lose federal grant funding amid push to end DEI policies. In San Diego schools lose grant money as feds target DEI. In Connecticut school districts could lose $321 million in federal grant funding. In North Carolina schools lose tens of millions in teacher grants after Trump administration does DEI cuts. And in South Carolina, upstate school district challenges federal grant revocation. And to keep track of what's going on in public schools, the Department of Education has created an NDEI reporting portal, also known as a snitch line. So if you see something going on inappropriate in school, you can report it to the Department of Education, and they will target that school. Out in Arizona, 3 Arizona school districts lose federal grant funding amid push to end DEI policies. A member of an Arizona school board says grant money going directly to paying their teachers is getting swept up in DEI rollbacks. Now, it is possible that some of these schools are relatively innocent and they're just getting caught up in this, but more often than not, you've got these schools pushing DEI in every possible program, all their hiring, and when they do that and they roll all of their programs into something that's inappropriate, illegal, and is getting canceled, they're going to lose federal funding for that. Most funding for schools is through local school taxes, but some federal grants can add up to a lot of money. And if the schools abuse that opportunity, if they take the money and they put it places that the federal government doesn't want, they're going to lose those grants. 3 Arizona school districts are losing millions of dollars in federal funding that was meant to support teachers' salaries and retention. The funding was pulled by the U.S. Department of Education in a move tied to the Trump administration's order to remove diversity, equity, and inclusion policies from schools. Ed Hermes, a member of the Osborne School District Governing Board, explained that the funds were designed specifically for teacher pay. However, the U.S. Department of Education eliminated the grant because of its association with the word equity in the program's title. Yeah, maybe it's not such a great idea to mix equity, diversity, inclusion in your programming and in your departments because it's ideological and it's political. And now you ain't getting the money. Quote, now to have the rug pulled out from under us, we're left reeling and frankly trying to find answers, said Hermes. Last week, another school district, Maricopa County Schools, confirmed it lost a similar federal grant for several schools in the valley. In an email to the Osborne School District, CEO of the National Institute for Excellence in Teaching, Joshua Barnett, said, the acting Secretary of Education has determined that it is a priority of the Department of Education to eliminate discrimination in all forms of education across the United States. In line with the department's obligations to constitutional and statutory law, this priority includes ensuring that department grants do not support programs or organizations that promote or participate in diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. The AZ Prime grant was found to be inconsistent with these policies as it either promotes or participates in DEI initiatives that conflict with the department's policy of prioritizing merit, fairness, and excellence in education. Tom Horn, Arizona's superintendent of public instruction, suggested that the removal of funding could be linked to a broader effort by the federal government to eliminate DEI-related programs from schools. You think, Tom? That probably is what it is. He noted that some educational institutions are adjusting their programs by removing the term equity in an attempt to secure funding. Quote, they've been doing a lot quickly. So they've just been doing word searches. I think it would be helpful to them to take the word out and ask for the money back, Horn said. I know that a lot of educational institutions are doing that. They're taking those words out. Yeah, probably a good idea to take those words out. The catch, though, according to Hermes, is that the money awarded from the AZ Prime grant wasn't going towards any type of DEI policy or to push to hire teachers based on their race. Oh, I'm sure it wasn't. Of course it was. Quote, this has nothing to do with DEI. It has nothing to do with the grant that we received, a competitive grant because the U.S. Department of Education saw that we needed this funding, Hermes said. We don't get funded enough here in Arizona for our public education. So we need it, and we've been relying on this grant to fill those gaps. The loss of these funds has left districts scrambling to find alternative sources of revenue to support teachers' pay for the rest of the year. Osborne School District, for example, is searching for $250,000 from their contingency funds to cover the gap just through the rest of this school year. Quote, "We made a promise to our kids, and unlike the federal government, we don't break those promises," Hermes said. But you are willing to put politics and ideology into every aspect of operating your schools, from discriminating in hiring to diversity statements, in some cases discriminating against the kids, separating the kids based on race. What did you think was going to happen? And in San Diego schools lose grant money as feds target DEI. San Diego County school districts lost nearly $1 million in federal grant funding for teacher training programs because they promote diversity, equity, and inclusion. The Department of Education's action shows the local impact of its crackdown on DEI policies and threats to cut funding. Why should the federal government, why should federal taxpayers be paying for teacher training programs in San Diego that promote DEI? They shouldn't. The Tulane County Office of Education received a letter from the Education Department cutting the $10 million teacher quality preparation program it runs in collaboration with the San Diego County Office of Education, San Diego State University, and other education agencies around the state. The notification letter said the grant is terminated in part because it provides funding for programs that promote or take part in DEI initiatives. $10 million for this in just San Diego alone. The San Diego County Office of Education was set to receive $900,000 to distribute, but was notified by Tulare of the funding cut on February 18th. The Education Department announced it will cut more than $600 million in cash grants to train teachers on divisive ideologies, including critical race theory, DEI, anti-racism, social justice activism, and instruction on white privilege and white supremacy. Many affected grants included teacher and staff recruiting strategies implicitly and explicitly based on race, according to the Department of Education. And in North Carolina, tens of millions of dollars they will not be getting because they misspent it in ridiculous ways. From North Carolina, schools lose tens of millions in teacher grants after Trump administration DEI cuts. The Trump administration has abruptly cut off tens of millions of dollars in federal grants that North Carolina public schools have been using to recruit and retain teachers. What kind of teachers? I think you know what kind of teachers. Teachers that fit their ideological agenda. On Monday, the U.S. Department of Education announced it had terminated more than $600 million in federal grants that said were being used to train teachers in divisive ideologies. Now, some teachers who are being paid out of that grant money are at risk of losing their jobs. Hundreds of current and aspiring teachers face losing thousands of dollars in promised bonuses and stipends. Bonuses? If you can't afford to pay them, why are you paying them bonuses? They would say for retention, because they don't want them to move on and go do something else. But for the most part, they're not even qualified. The quality of teachers we have in the United States is not what it needs to be. So let's just put it this way. They ain't leaving those jobs unless there's no money to pay them. According to the termination letter, the stated reason for this decision is that the program includes diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. Wake County said in a statement, "Our attorneys are reviewing the termination decision and our options for response." Quote, "This grant was designed to strengthen teacher recruitment and retention, reduce vacancies, and improve hiring processes. There was no evidence of fraud, waste, or abuse, and the program was operating as intended, delivering measurable results for our schools and students." Yeah, but the results and your measurements and all that, aside from them probably being wrong, were based on illegal discriminatory practices. And no, the federal government is not going to bless that. They're not going to sponsor that. And if you continue to do that, if you find another source of funds to do it, they're going to come and stop you. The Innovation Project plans to appeal the loss of grant funding used to help 79 rural schools and fill teacher positions in its Reimagining Teaching Talent project. Can you imagine what that must be? Quote, "Every child in this state, wherever they are, deserves great teachers, and our teachers deserve to be treated with respect," according to Sharon Contreras, executive director of the Raleigh-based Innovation Project. She went on to say, quote, "This has shown that we're not honoring the principle of ensuring every child has a great teacher." Yeah, and when you consider great pushing racism, that's where you have a little bit of a conflict and you kind of need to reevaluate your new terminology. The federal government cuts will impact public schools all across North Carolina. A $21.5 million grant over 3 years from Montgomery County Schools to hire a more diverse teacher workforce and identify master teachers. So to discriminate in their hiring practices, no thanks. A $21.5 million grant over 3 years for the Innovation Project to help support teachers in 8 school districts. We already heard from the lady from the Innovation Project. She has her own definition of the word great. No thanks. An $11.8 million grant over 3 years for Wake County's Project Leaders Program to recruit and retain teachers at 25 high-need schools. What do you mean high-need schools? Have you heard of special needs? Special needs are for disabled children, and they're very expensive, and you need to support special needs children. But here's what these diversity people have done. They've gone and co-opted the special needs, which any type of child of any race or any background can have special needs issues, and those are tragic, and those need federal funding to support those children. But they've come up with their own term of high needs. What's high needs? High needs schools are schools that serve students from low-income families. Okay. Students with disabilities. I have no problem with that. Or students from underrepresented communities. Oh, students from underrepresented communities. So more DEI, more diversity, more nonsense. And why don't we take all the special needs funding and move it over to those high needs schools? Because who cares about the special needs kids? We care about the high needs kids. These people are so far off base and so far off reality that, yeah, I can see them doing that in literally 2 seconds. Hopefully they never do something like that. Let the disabled kids get what the disabled kids need. Let's fund it as much as we can. But none of this high needs nonsense. Look at these monsters. They've done it again. A $9.8 million grant over 5 years for High Point University to recruit and train teachers to work in 3 high needs school districts. And again, an $8 million grant over 5 years for High Point University to recruit and train teachers to work in 4 high needs school districts. High needs, not special needs. High needs because of their race. Here's one that's a little bit different. A $7.7 million grant over 3 years to pay highly effective teachers up to $18,250 extra per year to stay in the classroom while taking on additional leadership roles in their school. I wonder what those leadership roles are. Does it have something to do with diversity and maybe a little equity and inclusion thrown in? This is such a corrosive thing for society. Treat everyone the same. And if someone, God forbid, has a disability, provide the resources for them. But don't try to take money away from disabled children and give it to other children based on their skin color. And again, $5.2 million grant over 5 years to train aspiring teachers to work in high needs areas. And again, 2 grants totaling $4.4 million over 5 years to recruit diverse aspiring teachers. Because if they're not the right skin color, we can't hire them. Or if they have the wrong sexual preferences, can't hire them. And a $2.4 million grant over 5 years for UNC Chapel Hill to recruit and train teachers for the Diverse and Resilient Educators Advised Through Mentorship Program, which spells out DREAM, to work in high needs Durham schools. It's important to not classify kids based on race. They should never learn that, especially not at an early age. The terminated grants represent more than $90 million in federal funds. Quote, the impact of losing these grants in North Carolina is significant and disparate, according to Contreras. Yes, because the way you were giving out the money was significantly disparate, meaning unfair, to the kids, to children. You're doing this to children. And they're also doing it to teachers. You should not have programs just to hire teachers of certain skin colors or sexual preferences. Teaching is very hard. These guys need to focus on the teaching, not their politics and their ideology. The Trump administration has ordered the elimination of diversity, equity, and inclusion programs and policies in federal agencies and federally funded education programs. On February 14th, the Department of Education gave public schools a 14-day notice to eliminate DEI programming or risk loss of federal funding. That also applied to colleges and universities, and they have been freaking out, and rightly so. The Department of Education cut 2 of its largest discretionary programs for professional development, the $70 million a year Teacher Quality Partnerships Program, and the $80 million a year Supporting Effective Educator Development, or SEED grants, according to Education Week. In its announcement of the grant cuts, the Department of Education accused the recipients of, quote, using taxpayer funds to train teachers and education agencies on divisive ideologies, which is clearly what they were doing. It's even in the grant titles. It's not complicated. Quote, training materials included inappropriate and unnecessary topics such as critical race theory, diversity, equity, and inclusion, social justice activism, anti-racism, and instruction on white privilege and white supremacy, the Education Department said in its press release. The Innovation Project says references to diversity were required to be included in the grant applications by the Biden administration. But the group says that ideas like performance-based pay have long been supported by both Republicans and Democrats. Nobody cares about performance-based pay. Obviously, that's not the issue. The issue is the prior administration was pushing a racist agenda, and the current administration is not allowing you to continue to push a racist agenda. Maybe apply for a new grant, but don't do anything racist in that grant, and maybe you'll get the money. Maybe you won't. One of the areas being targeted by the Department of Education is how grant recipients say they'll try to recruit more minority educators to better reflect the demographics of their student populations. Most teachers are white, but the majority of public school students are not. Quote, many of these grants included teacher and staff recruiting strategies implicitly and explicitly based on race, according to the Department of Education. Well, that is the problem. It doesn't matter what the skin color is of the student or the teacher. A great teacher is not a teacher that has the same race as the child. A great teacher is able to reach and communicate with and build trust with that child. It's not a skin color issue, it's not a gender issue, and it's not a sexual preference issue. The Innovation Project says there's no DEI training or DEI initiatives in its program. The group says all hiring and compensation has been based on performance only. But there's nothing in the hiring of individuals or promotion of individuals that remotely looks like preferential hiring or racial hiring, according to Contreras. But we certainly want to tap into all communities. Yet good luck trying to fool the current administration with that nonsense. Let me know what you think of all this in the comments below. Always love to see your ideas. Please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications, give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you again soon with another story. And if I don't see you, I will miss you.